welcome the motion from the member from West Bay and seconded by the member from Boddentown East, because it does raise important issues that should be discussed, and I certainly know that their intention behind it is positive and seeking to bring the issue to the fore for the benefit of the country and our people. Madam Speaker, obviously this is a very emotional or emotive issue, let me put it that way, for many people. And where I disagree with the member from West Bay is in the suggestion that this is a matter which should be discussed only here in this Honourable House. That was the implication, Madam Speaker, and I think that we need to be bold enough to make sure that we understand what the views of the people of this country are on issues like this. Madam Speaker, we know what all the challenges are, and as with the motion that we discussed earlier, where we had presentations of the potential benefits and the potential pitfalls, the potential risks, obviously there are similar factors to take into account on issues like this as well. Madam Speaker, we have all of the problems today of a less of a developing country, but more of a developed country because of the challenges that we have with trying to fit so much activity within the confines of an island, which is the main island, which is Grand Cayman, 21 miles long, 8 miles wide at its widest point, and of course not evenly done. And of course we have our beautiful sister isles as well. I don't think anybody is suggesting anything of the sort in terms of building height increases there, thankfully, because I don't believe that should be a part of the discussion. But for this one, Madam Speaker, for Grand Cayman, I think it is certainly fair to have that discussion. But as I said, Madam Speaker, I feel strongly that we need to include the people of the country. Madam Speaker, back in the, I think, late 90s it was, the country embarked on an exercise then which was supposed to give us vision, what they were calling Vision 2008 at that time. And the concept there, Madam Speaker, was to get the views of the people as to what they wanted the country to look like. Basically, 20 years down the road, and what they wanted the country to feel like, where they wanted to live. Many countries, Madam Speaker, have taken very strict approaches. They have greatly limited the kinds of development. They have specified that down to the types of roofs and the colors of roofs and all sorts of stuff. We haven't chosen to take that approach here, Madam Speaker. I think Cayman definitely looks far more cosmopolitan than many places. But I think in general there are factors that it is really appropriate for us to get the views of the people. Madam Speaker, I'll be speaking about it in the coming weeks, but I am going to be proposing ways that we can start doing that to get the input of the people of the country in the coming months, because I think it's really important that we do that. The people of the Cayman Islands, the people who we are elected by, are rightly in the best place to tell us what they want from the country, what they want the country to look like. Madam Speaker, we have, as I said earlier, we have the challenges of traffic. We've discussed that in this session of this Honourable House. We know that there are difficulties there. One of the challenges, obviously, of having higher buildings is that within that area you end up having higher population densities, and you will likely end up having significantly higher utilization of existing infrastructure. But, Madam Speaker, these are all things that are manageable, provided that we plan appropriately. I will have said earlier in this session as well, Madam Speaker, that for the country to make decisions, to make plans, we need to ensure that our people are involved. And we really do not have the same luxury of the margin for error that we've had in the past. Madam Speaker, we've had building heights, just focusing on that because that is the subject of the motion, focusing on that specifically for the moment. We've had over, I think, 1, 2, 3 or 4 times building heights that were increased in the last 50 years. I don't know whether there was any structure, whether there was any process around that decision making. It did feel at times like it was more of a reaction to a specific proposal. So when we consider these things, Madam Speaker, I think we need to understand what is the root problem we're trying to solve, how we're trying to address these issues. Madam Speaker, I know that there are those who will take the view that we can do all this, we can continue to do all this without any consequences, the country has been successful so far and it hasn't caused any significant problems. Madam Speaker, I think we're seeing the reality of many of the problems today, from traffic to the need for schools in places that schools are already full, and we know we need to find the money to build additional schools. We have had a population increase just in the time that we have been in office, Madam Speaker, because if you recall, we came in on the basis that we were being told the population was 65,000, and by the time we did the population, began the slightly overdue population census, we were looking at a result in, I think, was it December or January of December of last year or January of this year, that the conclusion from the census was that the population was around 71,000. Of course, 8 months later, we had an indication from the Labour Force Survey that the population had jumped to 78,000. So, Madam Speaker, we are facing significant challenges because of population growth, because we have been successful as a country, and because our economy has grown, our financial services has been an absolute stalwart, performer as a part of our economy, and tourism is now coming back with a roar. All that means, Madam Speaker, is that we absolutely need to ensure that we're doing proper planning, that we have the adequate physical, social, technological, and even cultural infrastructure in place to help us manage the consequences of this growth. Madam Speaker, we also have the challenges of climate change. We have the situation which has developed with, again, planning issues relating to seawalls and similar obstacles that have been allowed to be built in the dynamic beach zone, which has resulted in significant erosion on our precious tourism asset, national asset of 7 Mile Beach. That, Madam Speaker, is a very significant issue that we have to bear in mind. And one of the solutions to that, Madam Speaker, is to recognize that we cannot allow the kinds of development that we have had in the past in the dynamic beach zone. Madam Speaker, in the early part of our sort of development cycle, probably back in the 70s, late 70s, maybe early 80s, I think the practice at that time was to not allow development beyond what was called the vegetation line at that point. We have gone beyond that, and we have utilized a varying sort of mean high water mark, and that has, I think, resulted in approvals being given to certain types of development with variations to what were established setbacks from that high water mark, from that varying high water mark. And that has resulted in some of the challenges that we've had with erosion, with the walls, etc., being built into the dynamic beach zone. One of the solutions there, Madam Speaker, is to facilitate what is referred to as a managed retreat. And that is, you pull back buildings from the dynamic beach zone out of the area which tends to generate the erosive forces on the beach. Because we're always going to have periods of wave action, and whenever that occurs and you have these walls or these obstacles that have been put in a dynamic beach zone, it interferes with the natural process. And even further than that, I mean, normally when you have wave action on a beach and erosion, you usually have sand on the beach ridge, which helps to replenish sand that has been removed by wave action. When we develop there, more often than not, that sand is completely removed. So that's not available to participate in the natural process of reestablishing the beach. So, Madam Speaker, a part of this has to be a discussion about a managed retreat, moving buildings back, moving a lot of the developments back. And obviously, a compromise in respect to that is to facilitate and to allow buildings to go higher so that the project can work, and we are able to provide, for example, hotels that generate income, additional income in terms of the hotel room tax. So this approach, this tactic of managed retreat is, I think, going to be necessary for us, and a part of it is going to be, part of the solution in respect to that will be to facilitate buildings going higher. How much higher? Well, that is the question, Madam Speaker. And that is what I think the people of this country have a right to have a say in. I think it should not be just a discussion with the members, us here as members, making assumptions of about what the people of the country feel is the right sort of building height and the right approach to take in respect of this. Madam Speaker, we are all here trying to find solutions to the long-term best interests of the country, to the long-term economic health of the country, to the health and well-being of the people of the country, and improving their quality of life. So it's fair to consider these kinds of approaches. I don't think that it should simply be something that is considered in isolation without a discussion with the people of the country, Madam Speaker. So while we're doing this trade-off, trying to attain this dynamic balance of sustainability versus utility, I want the majority of the people of this country to have a say in that. And I think, Madam Speaker, that we can do that. I think today, with the utilization of technology and a determined effort for us to engage with the people of the country, I think we can do that, Madam Speaker. We conducted earlier this year a climate change risk assessment, and in that process, a survey was done. I think we had actually about over 1,000 responses, which in terms of statistical prediction was something like 3 times what had been anticipated. So we can engage with this through this process, Madam Speaker, of talking to our people and explaining these issues. But we have to have proper development planning as well. We have to be working on the development plan. We have to be working on infrastructure. We have to have a clear idea of the impacts on the people of the country, or the impacts on our infrastructure. God, everybody knows, Madam Speaker, we cannot just go and build more roads. There is a finite extent to which we can develop roads and do things to move people in cars on this island. Of course, my colleague, the Minister for Tourism and Transport, he is working on a public transport strategy, which we're all going to be contributing to. That is another important part of all of this, Madam Speaker, because we have to find ways to reduce the impact and the load on our existing infrastructure. So, Madam Speaker, I am happy to support the motion as amended to consider 15 to 20 floors. Madam Speaker, it will be moving forward with the plan to engage fully, to understand the views of our people, to get their input, Madam Speaker, because I think that is the right thing to do. But at the same time, all of the technical knowledge around planning, around infrastructure, around confirming what the impacts will be on the needs for schools and any other infrastructure, any other service that the people of our country utilize, Madam Speaker, we need to know what the impacts are going to be. We need to know and be able to plan how we are going to provide those services, and importantly, when do we need to provide those services. Madam Speaker, the buildings of this sort, I think we all recognize, these are not going to be places that Caymanians will be buying to live in generally, because it's going to be out of their price range or won't be available if it's a hotel, for example. But of course, it does contribute to the economy. It does help to provide jobs as well, it does provide an injection in terms of economic activity. All of that, Madam Speaker, is important. Sustainability is about the social benefits, the economic benefits, and environmental benefits. So we have to balance all of these things, and we have to plan the way we're going to do this. We need to also get the views of the people so that we understand clearly what it is that they want and how they want us to go about doing it. Madam Speaker, with that, I thank you for the opportunity, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the discussion. I'm looking forward to having discussions with the people of the country as to how we go about this and have this really important discussion, because it is necessary for our long-term sustainable future. Thank you, ma'am.
Does any other member wish to speak? The Honourable Deputy Leader of the Opposition.
Oy. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have a few comments. There'll probably be nothing surprising on this motion, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, I'll start by saying that, or start by expressing my disappointment that due to the COVID pandemic, myself as Minister and this administration were not able to carry out a review of the National Development Plan, despite an ambitious start, Madam Speaker, with the creation of the National Planning Framework called Plan Cayman. I will say, Madam Speaker, that I am even more disappointed, though, that after some 19 months into the PACT administration, that certainly campaigned strongly on sustainability, that nothing yet has been done. Now, Madam Speaker, we're facing the dangers of possible amendments to the National Development Plan for building heights without a proper review of the entire plan being done. Madam Speaker, I agree with much of what was said by the move of the motion, the member from West Bay West, and as well as the Premier. And I think if you speak to persons, they fear that building heights are inevitable. There's discussions, there may be disagreements about where we should have them. Some people say if we can have them, let's have them in Georgetown. Others say, oh, make them keep it on 7 Mile Beach. But what is true is that whatever decision is made, it can't be a one-size-fits-all. As the Premier spoke about, I don't think we're talking about the sister islands when we're talking about 20 or 30-story buildings. I don't think we're talking about North Side either, if we're talking about 20 and 30-story. I might be wrong. I may be wrong. So it is not a one-size-fits-all, Madam Speaker. But I assumed when I saw that the motion was coming that the member was going to speak to 7 Mile Beach, and he said he left it open for the government, for the technocrats to decide just where. But Madam Speaker, if we were to just look at 7 Mile Beach, just looking at its size, it is nothing more, Madam Speaker, than what you would call a planned area development in much larger countries. You take some of the, I've been to timeshares that are just as big as 7 Mile Beach when it comes to square mileage. So, Madam Speaker, I feel that it is unfortunate that we're here debating this in isolation, because if we had, or if the PACT administration had started any sort, and let's forget Plan Cayman, but any sort of review of the National Development Plan, then perhaps we would not even be here discussing this private member's motion. But let me talk a little bit about Plan Cayman and the national framework. Madam Speaker, the tagline of that project was "Your Plan, Your Future." And Madam Speaker, we made great efforts to invite all residents in the Cayman Islands to contribute to the process. As the Premier alluded to, we felt that that was important as well. And during the consultation on the first phase of the plan review, the National Planning Framework, Madam Speaker, over 2,000 comments from 356 respondents were received. And these comments were recorded and carefully considered and presented to the community via the consultation paper. Madam Speaker, engagement with the whole community should be an ongoing feature of any review of the National Development Plan. The review must be focused on must include consultation exercises and must include consultation exercises in the preparation of each of the area plans, should the government choose to take that route. Madam Speaker, different consultation methods could be used to engage the whole community. In-person town hall meetings, online approaches, social media, again, opening back the website or creating a website for feedback. Madam Speaker, before any decision is made on building heights or redevelopment of areas, beach access has long been recognized as a key issue for the Cayman Islands. There's a growing level of frustration, Madam Speaker, and perceived threats regarding the public's right of access to the beaches around our islands. Madam Speaker, assurance of public access must be addressed, and the issue affiliated with beach access must be addressed, Madam Speaker, and some of those issues affiliated with beach accesses are not limited to providing adequate and unrestricted public access to the beaches and the sea, including for the fire and rescue vehicles within our hotel and tourism zones, defining clear setbacks and public access to beaches for coastal developments, and to develop a comprehensive recreation and open space plan that include beaches and beach access points. And I think the move of the motion alluded to the same vision that he had many years ago on beach access and open space plans. Madam Speaker, any future decisions, any future plans must take a holistic approach to the climate change issues. While acknowledging that the threats of sea level rise, various elements of climate change resilience and adaptation must be addressed, such as coastal zone management, sustainable transportation, the natural environment, site and building design, Madam Speaker, sustainable design and construction, electricity and street lighting, and tourism zones. Madam Speaker, any plan going forward has to protect the important natural resources and at the same time enhance our public open spaces. We must exercise environmental preservation. We must create and maintain open spaces. We have to develop coastal mangrove buffers, and we have to have a proper stormwater and drainage plan. So, Madam Speaker, with a comprehensive framework, we can make these sorts of decisions. With a plan, we can build for the future. These sorts of decisions can be made with proper public input and the reassurance that we are building for the future in a sustainable fashion, Madam Speaker. As our population grows, the need for us to review the 25-year-old National Development Plan is now at a critical stage, and 7 Mile Beach in particular is now at risk of redevelopment without an updated development plan. We already see older properties being demolished, Madam Speaker, and there are plans to redevelop future sites. We saw places such as the Beach Coma knocked down and redeveloped. We saw the old Beach Club and Caribbean clubs knocked down and redeveloped. And now, Madam Speaker, we see the La Covia is scheduled to be demolished and redeveloped as well. With most of these properties in 7 Mile Beach, Madam Speaker, with most of the properties in 7 Mile Beach approaching that age, Madam Speaker, they will need major renovations, and the owners will need to make a major investments or the decision to redevelop. With the new codes, with the buildings not having elevators, with them not being accessible to the disabled, most are looking at a full redevelopment as a more viable option versus the high cost of renovations that would be required for them to become compliant with modern building codes and practices, Madam Speaker. If we want these sprawling 2- and 3-story buildings to be redeveloped in a sustainable fashion, addressing areas such as rising sea levels and beach accesses and all those that I spoke about earlier, then we will need to talk about taller buildings, greater setbacks, turtle-friendly lighting, all the things we know we need to do, but we cannot afford to do them in a vacuum, Madam Speaker. We cannot afford to do them without a plan. So, Madam Speaker, I can certainly offer my support to this motion, the concept of the motion, and as agreeing with the Premier in saying that it cannot be done in isolation and that we have to take these things into consideration. I can only encourage the government, Madam Speaker, call it whatever they want to call it, but as a matter of urgency, start the process on the update on the National Development Plan, and the easiest way to do it is by zones. If they want to do it by 5 zones, 4 zones, 3 zones, it doesn't matter. But as we all know, what is going to be suitable for 7 Mile Beach will not be suitable for East End. What is suitable for North Side may not be suitable for West Bay. But the clock is ticking. We have to do something. If we do not do anything, people will just continue to redevelop in an ad hoc fashion. And we as a government, us in here, will continue to kick that can down the road until we have created an island of chaos for our children and grandchildren. So, Madam Speaker, as I said, we on this side understand the need for we on this side, Madam Speaker, I'm sorry, understand that we have to start looking at more sustainable forms of redevelopment and development in the country. And yes, that includes taller buildings, in our opinion, and certainly in my opinion, Madam Speaker. And so the Premier has indicated that the government will be accepting the motion. Madam Speaker, we on this side are not going to object to that, but we urge the government to do it, but do it as part of a comprehensive plan. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I thought I ought to get up now. Before, as the former Premier or Sir Alden said, before there ain't nothing left to say. Madam Speaker, this speech that I have here was written when I was first asked to second this motion, but it has now been amended about 10 times. And I could not change it 10 times, my speech. So I pray this one does justice. As I stand here and ponder this motion, Madam Speaker, and one of the negative things have been said about why is this being done, why it's even been considered. When people have no care and heart for the people, they tell you one side of the story that will suit them. But when you have persons like the mover, the member for West Bay West, and myself, put our thoughts together on how we can preserve and make life opportunities better for the people of the Cayman Islands, that will insinuate, it's the time of the night. Hungry too. Put our thoughts together on how we can preserve and make life opportunities better for the people of the Cayman Islands. They will insinuate other things. You can believe that. Madam Speaker, let me tell you, our motion is intended to lessen the building footprint and save property, making more lands available for the Cayman Islands and for Caymanians. The cost of a piece of land or a house lot is probably over $100,000, which is putting it out of reach of regular Caymanians. And I must say, I am proud of the Minister of Housing for his effort and determination to build more houses than any other minister. And that's why I keep saying some governments will plant and some will water. But we complement each other. As I bought the most property in one term, and he will build the most houses in one term. Using it in North Side too? Well, I'm still committed to that. And these are initiatives for persons who wouldn't regularly afford these high prices in land and homes. Madam Speaker, as properties were built too close to the water's edge, and we are paying the price now. As a former Minister of Environment, I saw the maps of our water's edge without seawalls many years ago, and the situation was made worse when seawalls were at play. We now have an opportunity in space where there's limited land to go higher up and enforce a setback up to 150 feet or whatever, at least. The only way to achieve this is to change our building heights to make the accommodation, in my humble opinion. Madam Speaker, tall buildings generally recognized as an efficient type of compact development that helps reduce traveling distances and carbon emissions. Madam Speaker, some people should stop really talking about the DART organization like nothing positive has happened from them. They employ hundreds of people, especially in the core DART companies. They brag approximately 75% Caymanians. What do you think the Caymanians there are saying? We say we are a government for all the people. So I believe they mean well. We ought to thank them. During COVID, they kept construction going. I think we ought to thank DART for believing in Cayman. These buildings can't be picked up and taken anywhere. Fear is fear, Madam Speaker. That's my opinion. Madam Speaker, this tall building concept is entirely consistent with sustainability and climate resiliency. When you elevate the ground floor, increase setbacks from the water, including mixed use to promote fewer cars, more walking or biking, all of what Cayman Bay is about. Let's give credit where it's deserved. And these tall buildings, Madam Speaker, should have some component of hotel or lodgings. We don't want just to build condos. Hotels create jobs for people and they utilize our local services and goods and generates repetitive revenue for Cayman. So, Madam Speaker, I need my land for our people. Hence the reason I was adamant about supporting this. Let's just take, for instance, because we have all heard, Madam Speaker, about the situation where persons for PR were buying up whatever property they could find, whatever foreclosures, etc. Imagine if they had the opportunity to buy a condo, they would probably do that instead, rather than buying up land that our Caymanians could be living on. So, Madam Speaker, we have a lot of Caymanians on the waiting list at the Housing Trust whom are just dying to own a piece of this rock. And we all need the land we can get to ensure that they can own a piece of this rock for an affordable cost. The value of owning a home is one of the greatest investments a person will make in their lives, and this improves their quality of life, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, I hear them talking about ad hoc. You know the reason why things are being done ad hoc? Because any full plan never gets done, and it takes years and years. Governments come, governments go. That's the reason why it's not here yet. Because everybody, once they've got what they want, they don't want nobody else to get what they have. We can't have it both ways. Well, I think, yes, and I agree with members that we need public consultation. In fact, it should even go on the referendum if they wanted to fast track it. In my humble opinion, although fast track is not a very nice word around here, but the government needs to get out there and do a slew of meetings in every corner, and not just at the Georgetown Town Hall, to say that they had a consultation process, and all the people up in the East End and North Side, nobody knows, in Bordentown, and have people know the true benefit for them of what we're trying to achieve. It is not just building taller buildings to change the landscape or to change the skyline. It is also about giving persons this opportunity, whoever so comes along. And I believe that it can't be given to everybody. You have to subscribe to a certain criteria set out. And if you fit that bill, then you can build this, get this opportunity to build 20 floors. All right? Not everybody. It has to be done right. And I think we need public consultation because people need to understand and not just sit down and listen to some people on some talk shows saying, oh, building heights going to change your landscape. People you need to finish it and says, okay, well, we're going to do this, and we're going to do it in a very, we're going to do it in a way that is safe and sound, and this is what Caymanians are going to benefit from giving developers this opportunity to do that. I don't think any developer should come here and Caymanians don't benefit from it. Because we're punishing for it now. If we got a road tax, we definitely need to increase that. We're trying to find money for this and that. There's more people here than us. So that means that somebody got to pay. It shouldn't be us. Madam Speaker, I guess you can say that this island is a sophisticated island. We already have 7 Mile Beach, which is more developed. So let's be specific where we want these kinds of buildings. But I believe one or two could come to the east with proper planning. And it could be so that we say the 15 to 20 we're saying, it says if you go in the east, you can only do 15, but you can't, if you're on West Bay Road, 7 Mile Beach, then you can do 20. And it can only be done in a certain area. So we need to have some structure about it. We just can't be putting them all over the place. So, Madam Speaker, we have an amazing hybrid of how the island is set out. And we definitely don't want to be Dubai or New York City. Select locations will allow for deep setbacks, open spaces, and taller buildings. We need to attract the best hotels or otherwise, especially with crews potentially dropping. So this addresses climate change also. Certainly the eastern districts could just remain at a lesser building height and can be done in a different zone. Madam Speaker, in wrapping up, I just want to say that this project aligns with the PAC's government's economic, environmental, and social priorities by advancing sustainable building practices, improving the jurisdiction's competitiveness in the luxury tourism sector, and producing ongoing employment for Caymanians and economic benefit for the islands. So, Madam Speaker, we never just brought this motion because we think that one person wants it. No. We have a problem. We have Caymanians that want homes. We want Caymanians that want land. We want Caymanians that want a piece of this rock, and they cannot afford it. So we need to find a way to get it done. We want everything, but we don't want to give up nothing. So, Madam Speaker, continuous employment for the construction industry, comprising of 14.2% of total employment, according to the 2021 Census of Population and Housing Report for the next 5 years. Madam Speaker, all indications is the direct impact of 3.3 billion. An indirect impact of 2.1 billion. The projects will generate a lot of jobs, Madam Speaker. And we need to ensure that we approach coastal development responsibly, considering long-term needs for managing Cayman's economic and population growth alongside climate resilience. This is all in the framework of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So, Madam Speaker, it's a time to sow and a time to reap. It's our people's time to reap. I say to this honorable House, as indicated by Premier and others, they're willing to accept and support this motion. I think this is the right step. We have some other work to do to ensure that this is done properly. And the main reason I agreed to second this motion is to help my people that otherwise couldn't have afforded what has gone out of their reach now. a piece of this rock. I thank you. Good night, and God bless.
The Honorable Minister for Tourism and Transport.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I don't intend to speak for too long, as many members have covered many of the benefits and the concerns of the intention of this motion of increasing the billing heights. Madam Speaker, I just want, before I get into a few of my viewpoints that I want to add to what has already been said, is that it's important, as we talk about something that may be seen by some as not a priority, that we tell the people of this country that we recognize there's a serious crime situation in our country. And on behalf of the members of this Parliament, those who are in charge with security, as per our Constitution, the people want to see more action in respect to that, because we, the politicians, are getting the blame for it. Now that I've said that and gotten out of the way, I want the people of this country to know that we, as members on the government side and the opposition, are concerned. We talk about it every day. But I want us to also recognize there's limitations in respect to our constitutional power. We want this problem solved just as much as the general public. And yes, as Minister of Tourism, I am very concerned, not only for tourism, because tourism is something that can be built, grown, recovered, as we are seeing, but more importantly, to the safety of my people. That being said, Madam Speaker, I think that we see that there's a variety of viewpoints in respect to this matter, and that's why I'm so happy that this motion was called to the floor of this House, because we all have identified so far, based on the contribution, there is a level of merit for this discussion for the public. Madam Speaker, most people would know that I probably am seen as the one member who's hedged his career on public consultation and the people's involvement. And why I'm willing to support this motion is because of the spirit of what the motion says. It says to consider. And you also, Madam Speaker and members of this House, would also hear the Premier talk about the opportunity that this presents. Just the mere discussion in this Parliament is going to, by its nature, allow people to start thinking. Those who said, oh, this is a great idea, they would have heard some of the negatives concerns, and they may reponder. Those who think that it's a bad thing may have heard some of the benefits and reconsidered. What we recognize is there's room for discussion and thought, because one of the biggest issues outside of cost of living and crime right now has been, and for some time, is access to the beach. We're having a major problem right now at our public beach that we, the government, are hoping to have some answer and resolve to in the first month of next year. But what the mover of this motion has acknowledged is there's an opportunity by something that investors, not only foreign investors, we're talking about Cayman investors too, like the Colonels, like the Fosters, like everybody else. Not only that, they want to make money on big, tall buildings. There's opportunity here for the government of the day, no matter who that may be, to negotiate better circumstances as to beach accessibility in giving something that is what is perceived to be inevitable. I almost heard everybody in the discussion talk about the inevitability of it. You know how I believe it's inevitable? Some may disagree with that. Because when the discussion about building heights came up, I said, you know what? I don't want to talk to, and no disrespect to the seniors, but I don't want to talk to the older. I don't want to talk to anybody past 30. Because by the time, if it was even approved, by the time it got built, they'll be in the retirement, and they're not really going to feel the major effects. Obviously, they'll be caring about their nation and where it's going to, but the people who have to live with Cayman is the younger generation. So I decided, Madam Speaker, to talk to some of them. I said, if we could get back some of our beach front to ensure that the beach erosion problem does not continue, if the government allowed a setback policy, would you be open to the idea of going up? Before even initiating the conversation, they said, well, Mr. Minister, it's inevitable it's going to happen. Now, that's not me saying it. This is the younger generation saying it. It's inevitable it's going to go up. So if we can get back some of our beach, which is more important, and this is a group of what I would call those, I wouldn't say they're environmentalists, but they are the next generation who want to preserve. They're preservers. They want to see all the beach walls gone. They want to see where the beach, you can walk on it without worrying about somebody trying to run you off of their property. That's the position considering building heights can do. And we're obviously talking about the western side of the island. That's where most of this focus is going to come from. And Madam Speaker, I am just glad that the discussion is happening so we can talk about it. And I encourage all of those who are watching and who are listening to have discussions with your family members, your friends, your colleagues, your pastor, the person you look up to, your children. And after those discussions, come and give your feedback to your politicians. Matter of fact, all those who are in Georgetown Central, I expect you to reach out to me and tell me how you feel about this, because this decision is ours together. And that's what this motion is going to do. Now, Madam Speaker, I recognize there's going to be some difficulty with getting that feedback from the people because it's a very subjective topic. How high is too high? How do we know which areas to do it in? I've heard some people say, well, we can do it only on the western side, like the Honorable Deputy Opposition Leader. But then obviously I heard my good colleague, the Deputy Speaker, say, well, we can have one or two in East End. You see the vast difference in viewpoints. And the truth is, the reason why I was okay, even with the movers, the motion, first number of 20 to 25, is because we're going to have to start somewhere. You can't say, are you open to increasing building heights? You can say that and go from 10 to 11. You can say that and go from 10 to 13. You have to start with something. Now, what we sometimes are afraid to do is actually take the political risk of stepping forward because we are afraid. You can't, well, I agree with that, Madam Speaker. My good colleague, the Honorable Deputy Premier, has just highlighted the fact that he's not afraid. Matter of fact, he was one of the first ones that went out there and talk about building heights going up. And they almost eat him alive. But then, still here. But Madam Speaker, the point I'm trying to make is we have to have the discussion because there's obviously benefits. Now, like in any decisions you make in your life, you weigh them up, the pros and the cons. Now, normally if you see too many cons, you say, okay, that's not a good decision. But what you recognize here today, Madam Speaker, in the listening public, is that there was a whole lot of pros that were presented. So is it reasonable to say, let's have this discussion? Now, I know it is, some people are going to say, well, boy, I'm here dealing with high cost of living, electricity, wages not going up yet, crime and all these things, but we got to be able to ride and whistle. We got to be able to ride and whistle so we can have this discussion while we're trying to find the solutions to the other things. Because, Madam Speaker, you know why some of the things are coming up on us? I hate to say this, but it's a reality. Construction is slowing down, Madam Speaker. It is. It is slowing down, and it is the third small pillar of our economy. It's financial services, then it's tourism, and then you have this little small economy over there in the corner that employs the most people, called construction. Now, that doesn't sound good, because I know they will be saying, well, you can't build yourself forever because you won't have a certain amount of land mass, but that's exactly what the bill is the motion is talking about. If you only have a certain amount of land to work with, wouldn't this slow down the development of the land that we have available? Couldn't this be a help to the overall vision of protecting at least 30% of the country to stay green? What was the Paris Agreement again? The agreement? The Paris Accord, where every country agrees to have at least 30%. This can help us with that. Maybe if we say to somebody, whoever it may be, because I don't care if it's Dad or anybody else, I'm talking about the benefits for the country. In order for you to do that, you need to do X amount reserve for the environment. There's options that are here. And as scary as it may be, it is worse to not plan ahead than the problem comes around and then we go, boy, you know, 50 years later when we all gone and our great-grandchildren says, well, why didn't they just go up a little higher? We could have saved some of the land won't be so expensive now. You know, I mean, I just hope that when we have this discussion, we take away the emotion from it and think all the problems too. Now, even if you're coming from a standpoint of, boy, we're changing the island and the heights and they're not Cayman anymore. You're right. But I remember when I was a little boy and I used to work at Kirk Plaza as a grocery boy, it wasn't no shops no higher than 3 stories. And I remember the cries, because my mother was into the political world then when they used to say, Lord have mercy, they're moving from 3 stories to 5 stories, they're changing the whole world. And then they said that when you move from 5 to 7, they said the same thing. And then they move from 7 to 10, they said the same thing. Now, I'm not saying that we don't have the right to make that decision. But guess what? The next generation also have a right. It's timeliness. When is the time for when we are going to make these decisions? It's never a bad time to have a discussion, and that's all we're saying. To consider. Open up the discussion because there are some benefits. Madam Speaker, as the Minister of Tourism, I have to say that the opportunity to increase tourism revenue so we can get that money to pay for education, to pay for the free school lunches, to pay for the roads, to pay for the health care costs for our seniors who can't pay for it themselves, to pay for school uniforms, or any one of those things that many people depend on us to do. We got to get the money from somewhere. And I tell you what, Madam Speaker, when you're talking about having something concrete to depend on, this may not sound good. But tourism is more concrete to this country than financial services. There's no question about that. Now, we don't ever want financial services to go away. It's what helped brought us this far. But God forbid something silly happens, we will have to go back to tourism as our primary focus. The Honorable Deputy Speaker said a very, very good point. I wrote it down. And this may sound a little harsh, but we can't have our cake and eat it too. But I'm going to take it in a little different context, Honorable Member. We just said to the people, and this government supports their decision, that we are not going to do a cruise pair. Just last evening, I gave a statement to the realities of that decision, which we are willing to live with as a government, because that's the people's choice. But that reality is that cruise is declining. And Madam Speaker, it will continue to decline because the other cruise lines that I did not mention is already in the production line to the mega ships. I've went out on your behalf, the good people of this country, to talk to them, sat down with the big money people who own the ships, and I said, but you don't need to go to the mega ships. He says, this is business, this is money, this is how we do it. If you're not on board, we'll leave you out. So, we stick with that, no problem. We always said to stay over, make more money anyhow. But if we are going to lose that, we need something else, Madam Speaker. So we got to be open-minded. I'm not saying that we must turn this place into Singapore. I'm not saying to turn it into New York. But there are benefits. And before we close our minds to that, I want us to be mature enough to objectively have the discussion. Nobody's saying agree to it. Nobody's saying disagree with it. I'm saying that the people need to start thinking about something that is potentially inevitable. And if it's inevitable, it's best to plan for it rather than make it sneak up on you when you can't take the benefits for it. We have the position to say, you want to want tall buildings? And I want tall buildings? Well, we want 400 houses for our people. You want tall buildings? Well, we want another 5 miles of public beach back to give back to our people because we're having problems now. There's opportunities here, Madam Speaker, and we should not be afraid of it if we are willing to accept the inevitability of it. And I respect the mover of the motion for at least opening the discussion, because I can tell you this, Madam Speaker, don't think for 1 second that this is an easy discussion to have. Oh, we're going to get some licks tomorrow. Oh, they come in. We're going to get some love too from those who are willing to have the discussion in a mature way of thinking about it. But there's some people who are going to be adamant. They're going to say, see, they're changing the whole country. You know, what was the gentleman's name that did the port, that did the dock, and they voted him out the next election? Mr. Berkeley Bush. Madam Speaker, these are the types of discussions that happen when we do not engage the people. Mr. Berkeley Bush made the first dock that allows us to import food. And when he was doing it and he came to Parliament and said, this is what I'm going to do, and I'll be able to get fresh apples, fresh bananas, fresh meat. They said, you're changing the whole country. And they voted him out. You know what happened? Just 2 terms later, everybody was saying, boy, Mr. Berkeley, we thank you so much. If you didn't do that, we wouldn't be able to get anything today. But my point is that maybe if we try to engage the people, we have to do a better job at explaining the benefits and the negatives so the people can make a conscious decision by giving us, the members who represent them, good guidance. Because we're not here to do it just for them. I expect the people of Georgetown Central to look at it. Obviously, with me having engagements, I don't know about everybody else. But now that this discussion is open, it's time for me now to go down in Central and say, voters of Georgetown Central, here's something at hand. Here's what I've done my research and says what the pros and what the cons are. Can I stand in support or against based on these details? How do you feel? That's what I intend to do, and I hope that my whole government intends to do it just like that too. And we've heard about the many different forms of feedback, whether it's surveys or direct town halls like the deputy opposition leader said. But we need to get some feedback. And I don't think it's bad for us to do that. Madam Speaker, if the people of Georgetown Central want to know, I believe there is merit in going up. And I look forward to the opportunity to sitting down and explaining. Now, it's not my decision alone. I work on their behalf. I'm happy to sit with my people, and I'm going to do that because they may disagree, just like how they disagreed with the last administration on the pair. You think it's a good idea? Well, we don't think so. And that was the end of that. And that may be where this falls. So it's time for Cayman to talk to your members, because this is something that is here. What we fail to do as leaders over the years is we keep on afraid to talk about these taboo subjects. And I know that everybody in the country saw those 2 signs out there about the motion that we recently spoke about. I wasn't afraid to put a sign up because it's a reality. Nobody's here saying that you have to do any one or the other, but we have to talk about it. So, Madam Speaker, I did say I was going to be short. I did think that my colleagues have highlighted much of the pros, much of the concerns, and the government, the Premier has given the government's position in respect to what our intention is on the vote. But I support the Premier in the concept of saying we are going to consider, with no guarantees, because the only guarantee should be given in the PAC administration is after consultation with our people. But there is much merit to the discussion of going higher. Madam Speaker, that is my contribution. Hopefully that will help the public's viewpoint in respect to this topic, and that once we have voted in support of the member's motion, that the people see it from that perspective of not one of, there's no guarantee that tomorrow we're going up to 20 stories or any other mother stories, but one of the government is willing to talk to the people and consider this because there is merit. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? Does the mover of the motion wish to exercise his right of reply? Honorable.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would not be long. A lot has been said. I want to thank all members who have contributed to the debate, and certainly to thank the seconder of the motion, the Honorable Deputy Speaker, and the member for Bordentown East, and all my colleagues, hopefully, for their support. Madam Speaker, I will say this, that I never said that it would only or should only be discussed in the House. What I am saying still is that we must debate such things in the House, either through motions or other instruments, but can't be laid by just what we hear and see on social media. That's what I said. And there are a few things, Madam Speaker. We heard about 7 Mile. We can't build everywhere, and we don't want the country to come out unplanned. I hear it can't be done in isolation. And Madam Speaker, I've heard about a plan, but I don't know. I've never seen anything. But I would say this, Madam Speaker, with all the things that has been said that needs to be done, Deputy Leader of the Opposition went to great lengths to talk about, I don't know, 20, 25, 30, 100 things, but quite a bit. If we think that we're going to get anything done with a plan, with all of those things, it will take a few years. And the Deputy Speaker said a fact. With all those things, will take a few years. Administration after administration could only do. And you know why? You know why, Madam Speaker? We could only get certain things done because for some of the same talk we hear now. We can't do this. We can't do that. Have to be just right. Well, we want it to be just right, but facts is we're not going to get it when we need it. And some people seem to think we got the whole time in the world. Maybe that's what will have to happen. We'll have to take years, 5 years to get it done. We will need things done, those issues addressed. But we can't wait and do them all one time, or you'll never get anything done. That's how I see it. So, Madam Speaker, as I said, I've heard the Deputy Leader of the Opposition talk about a plan, but I haven't seen any. I don't know of any. Madam Speaker, another point I want to make is that I didn't come here, that I don't, and never have pushed for anyone but to do what is good for the country. Yes, we believe that there are investors who want higher buildings. But if we are going to allow them to develop, and whether they are local, a local person, or otherwise, then is that not allowing the widening of the footprint? Taking up more and more land? Cutting down more and more wetlands? Raising the higher areas to get marl? That is what is unsustainable. And if you had 100 by 100, 200 by 200, and you went up, you might save some land. And that's all I've been trying to say here. We cannot get all that everybody's been talking about one time. Can't. Yes, we had those big plan ideas of 2008. I contributed and saw certain things I wanted to. But plenty was unrealistic ideas because they never took the idea of what made us successful over the years, the kind of standard of living we had achieved. They never took all those things in consideration of how unique we were. No. Some of the things, pie in the sky. I heard my mother and some of the old teachers talking about Alaska. I don't know who he was, but he must have been a pie in the sky man. That's what it all, some of it came out to be. Some of the things were put in place. But there were grand ideas that never took what made Cayman successful into consideration. All it was a group of people who believed that some of them now, because you had genuine people involved, but as I said, a lot of things I believed in and some things got done. But you had too many of them who thought we shouldn't do anything. Just, you can go dredge up that piece of land over there because I want my house there. And that was some of the grand ideas coming from some of those kind of minds. And so, Madam Speaker, what we had achieved, some of it is waning. How do we get back to be able to get back to a system of a better standard of living for all if we don't do some of these things? Do them right, yes, but you can take one and do it right. I'm not of this idea that I got to have this almighty big plan of everything before you do something. The one thing that we have to do is to talk to as many people as possible, as the Minister of Tourism has said. If anyone don't see, and I know we do, we see what's happening on the world stage. That what is happening on the world stage is going to drift down to us probably this coming year. And let it not be, I'll say to this administration, what was told to me in 2008 when I say you have to cut your plan because you're not got the revenue and you're not going to have the revenue. Not on the kindest of morning will we listen to you. Oh no, Mickey, Mickey, we're not listening to you. What happened though? The whole world economy turned upside down, and we were caught off guard. Let us not. Let us continue to look steadily at what is happening on the world stage. We are headed for a rough time. That's my feeling from what I am seeing. We now, the facts are this, we are losing business, and we need to recognize that, and we need to push certain things like our tech industry. I don't care who it belongs. If it belonged Mr. Martian that lived on the moon, I don't care who it belonged to. As long as people get jobs, as long as we get something, make sure that we get something out of it. Because that hadn't been happening. Come on. They cuss me for West Bay Road. Cuss me for putting down one place where they can walk through. And then they went and put down one, and we got nothing out of it. But beat the hell out of me. Oh, they done that. And then I had to be the speaker for the premier. Oh, you know we had to. And they still beat the hell out of me. From what I understand, planning applications have dropped significantly in the past months. And from all indications of the financial situation, globally, as I said, we must be worried about an economic slowdown. So if we can get some things done, you better not turn them away. You better not run away, people, because I've said this and I'll say it again. This island is not the only girl at the ball. There are other islands with nice beaches, and our crime situation, as the Minister of Tourism just pointed out, is going to give us a blow if something is not done drastically, whatever that can be. I am told in regards to that situation, I'm told by the Commissioner of Police that the government is doing all that the government can do, but that they need things done through the community. So, Minister, if cruise tourism is coming down and we can build up overstay, or I call them the night or the hotel tourism, I wouldn't turn anything down. I would take my chance, take the licks, and get it done. When the people get the jobs, when the revenue is there, when you can give more in your budget to the elderly and the seamen and the veterans, and you can give more for school children, then people realize it. People realize what you've done. As sure as they cussed about the West Bay Road, as sure as they cussed about it, they were very happy to get it. The only mistake I made, I didn't push through East-West corridor. That's the mistake I made. I thank members for their contribution, their patience. I must tell you, I thank everyone for their patience, but mine run thin too. It did. It did. I nearly said, you know what? Let it be. But that's not what I'm here for. I'm here to do what we did. Talk, even though it wasn't a long conference or conferences, but the fact that we could talk and push one another and get some things to where we could agree, that's what's necessary. And that's what we did. So we while our patience run thin, and I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, maybe 15 votes, that's what it takes. Thank you all very much. Let's hope for the best for our country. And oh yes, as sure as they cursed Mr. Berkeley about the Port Georgetown, and they didn't want the West Bay, they didn't want this place, he wasn't doing the right thing, they're going to say that it was the right thing to have gotten that cruise port. You wait on time. Let's wish and hope and pray that Almighty God blesses us and save us from ourselves.
The question is that the government considers implementing a policy to increase building heights to 15 to 20 floors. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. Private member's motion number 5 of 2022-2023 is duly passed as amended.
Government business, bills, third readings, supplementary appropriation January 2020 to December 2020, Bill 2022.
The Honorable Deputy Premier.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move the supplementary appropriation January 20 to December 2020 Bill 2022 as amended by Finance Committee be given a third reading and passed.
The question is that a bill shortly entitled the Supplementary Appropriation January 2020 to December 2020 Bill 2022 be given a third reading and passed. As amended. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. The Supplementary Appropriation January 2020 to December 2020 Bill 2022 has been read a third time and passed as amended.
Supplementary appropriation January 2021 to December 2021 Bill 2022.
The Honorable Deputy Premier.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move that the supplementary appropriation January 2021 to December 2021 Bill 2022 as amended by Finance Committee be given a third reading and passed.
The question is that a bill shortly entitled the Supplementary Appropriation January 2021 to December 2021 Bill 2022 be given a third reading and passed as amended. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. The Supplementary Appropriation January 2021 to December 2021 Bill 2022 has been read a third time and is passed as amended. Members, call on the Honorable Premier to move the adjournment.
Madam Speaker, thank you very much. Madam Speaker, we have had a significant agenda and we have been very successful in getting through all of it. I want to congratulate members and thank them for their contribution. Madam Speaker, before moving the adjournment, I would like to, on behalf of the entire House, all members of the House, express our appreciation for the members of the staff of the Parliament, the contributions that they make, the assistance they provide. We want to wish them all a very Merry Christmas and a safe and happy holiday period. Certainly we would want to extend those same greetings to the entire country. Madam Speaker, we know it is customary at this time to express these sentiments, but the hour is late and we have had a long slog through the business of the House. I just want to take the opportunity to express Christmas greetings to all members of the House, all colleagues in the House, my colleagues on the government bench, as well as to those members of the opposition as well, and their families, Madam Speaker. At the end of the day, we've had a lot of comments here tonight about demands from families. At the end of the day, without the support of our families, we wouldn't be able to do this job effectively. So thank them, and Merry Christmas to everyone. Madam Speaker, with that, I will formally move the adjournment of this honourable House, sine die. Thank you.
Question is that this House do now adjourn, sine die. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. This honourable House stands adjourned, sine die.